Perfect.
Or you can also, can you find her too and allow her to share?
Well, she's host now, so I think we're good. Okay, thank you. Okay, great. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share this and we'll get started. Oops, share. And here we go. I'm going to present. All right. Oops. Well, this is a fine slide to start on. So this is basically an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to go over the importance of financial fitness. So like, why does it even matter? 2, we'll talk about all of those digits I mentioned, right? The metrics for figuring out if you're financially fit, and if not, how to actually measure that fitness. And then 3, we'll talk about the importance of your mindset and how to start changing that in the same way that you would think about that when it comes to your physical health. On this screen, we have what we call our road trip analogy. And this is sort of how we like to think about your financial fitness journey. So we're trying to get you from New York City all the way across the country to California, which we would consider like retirement, and also plan for all the stops you want to make along the way, right? So, you know, having a kid, for example, is a really expensive detour to Disneyland. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, just requires a different kind of planning. The 3 vehicles you see on here sort of represent the 3 different kinds of people that we see on their journey, right? So we've got the person up front in the Prius. They're traveling really light. They're really efficient. They're getting to California really fast and without having to stop for gas so often. We've got the person in the SUV. They're sitting a little more comfortable. They've got a little more baggage. It's a little bit nicer, but it's going to take them a little bit longer to get across to California. And then, of course, my personal favorite, the person in a full-on RV. They've got all kinds of baggage, all kinds of stuff going on. They are living a little more complex. Maybe they're not stopping as often. But there's no one way to be, right? There's no right or wrong. I'm not suggesting that the Prius is better than the RV. It's up to you to decide what your life looks like and how you want to live it. But the person in the front is just traveling more light and therefore can get to that retirement or financial independence goal a lot more quickly. So the question is, like, which vehicle do you want to be in, right? Your trainer ultimately is here to help you navigate all of that. We know what physical fitness looks like. So we have all these images. Some are better than others. There's a lot of, you know, we have an idea in our mind of what that looks like, what we're looking to attain. But we don't really know what the numbers are when it comes to personal finances. When we're getting physically fit, we can look at things like weight, we can look at BMI, we can look at dress size. This is our founder, Shannon, who I mentioned earlier. This is her photo from kind of her aha moment when she decided to start the gym. She's actually at Disney World in this picture, which I love. So you can see the little kid arm sticking out there. This was a very expensive detour for her. You gotta go through some mindset shifts to actually make some changes when it comes to physical fitness, right? Think about things in a different way, come up with some new activities. So we're going to talk about what this means for you in terms of your finances. What does that look like? So these are the 6 numbers that we're going to be going through today. And essentially, I'll be talking about why these digits are important and what they stand for. Just really quick, does anybody have any idea what any of these digits might represent?
I assume the 750 is your credit score?
Great. Yeah, nice work, Lana.
15% is what we should be saving from our income for like base retirement, right?
Not retirement necessarily, but it is a savings number, yeah. Any other guesses on any of them?
35% to live off of?
Okay, close, yeah. All right, so let's actually go through those. Those are some really good guesses. Let's go through the specifics. So first number is 15%, and this is your minimum savings goal of your monthly income. Now, it's not specific to retirement. It would be great to save 15% of your income for retirement, but there are a couple of other things that we also want to think about. So first and foremost, an emergency fund, right? So money for kind of unexpected life expenses. Maybe some other shorter term life goals like travel or starting a family, right? Like those can all be factored in here. But at a minimum, we want to make sure that at least 15% of your gross income is getting put aside for the future, wherever that may mean that it goes, right? Investment account, savings account, etc. So the example here is if you make $50,000 a year, that boils down to about $41.66. And so 15% of that is $625. So that's going to be your savings goal. Now, automation makes this super easy, right? So ideally, on a monthly basis, you're not having to sit down, come up with a number, move it to a savings account, right? We want to just set it up so that that money moves over automatically without you having to think about it. All right, our 6 is our 6 months of monthly expenses saved. And so I mentioned the emergency fund on the last slide. Essentially, your emergency savings fund should be anywhere from 3 to 6 months of your regular expenses. And you want this to be in ideally a high yield savings account. So what I mean by that is just an account with a higher interest rate. Ideally somewhere along, 1.3%. Sorry?
President.
Oh, if everyone could just go ahead and mute themselves, I think I can do that. But I want you guys to be able to participate. So if you're not speaking right now to me, if you could go ahead and mute your line, that would be great.
Lindsay, we had a question in the chat, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, no problem. By the way, I'm admitting all kinds of people over here.
No, thank you so much. We'll figure that out for next time. The numbers you're talking about, that's pre-tax, correct?
Mm-hmm, yeah, so 15% of your gross income. Yeah, so that's pre-tax. Net would be after taxes.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so going back to the number 6, again, this is 6 months of your expenses in an emergency savings fund. This is money for kind of all that life stuff you can't anticipate. So think about like losing your job, a pandemic like coronavirus, your car breaks down, you have a family emergency, a medical bill, just one of those fun life curveballs that you can't anticipate or plan for. Oh my goodness. And so, I got it, I muted them. Learning so much about Zoom today. Yeah, so if you spend $2,000 a month, you want to sit down and plan to have $12,000 saved. This is money you can tap into, like I said, if you have income loss, if you have an unexpected expense. It can feel really counterintuitive to put money into a savings account if you have debt, right? The debt feels really overwhelming. You want to take care of that. I can't tell you how many times I've met with people who are like, I just want to get my debt paid off so that I can start saving. The reality is that you need to do both. You need to strike some kind of a balance. I'm not saying ignore your debt entirely, but having this emergency cushion is how you get off that hamster wheel where you just feel like you're constantly owing money. This is the way that you keep you out of debt in the future, if you want to think about it that way, right? So when something comes up, rather than throwing it on a credit card or taking out a loan, you can just take care of it in cash. Unfortunately, about 46% of Americans can't handle a $400 emergency in cash. And so this is a really big problem. And this is one of the things we're working to help people to mitigate. All right. Let's talk about our savings buckets. So somebody actually said like 15% is what goes into retirement. I mentioned that 15% of your gross income might go into a number of different buckets. So this is how we think about and prioritize savings buckets. First, most conservatively, we have your emergency money, right? So that 6 months of expenses we just talked about. Then more moderately, let's say that's taken care of. We want to look at our life money, right? People get very caught up in like emergency money and saving for retirement, and they forget about all that stuff in between, right? Remember the road trip. Like there's more than just New York and California. There's a whole world to see in the meantime, and you want to be prepared for it. And it takes money, right? To own a house, to start a family, to get married. So we want to make sure we have funds for those kinds of things too, assuming those are your goals. And then more aggressively, we're looking at what we call our like moon money or retirement. We call it moon money because it's way out there. We can see it. We know it's coming, but we sort of have some time to plan for it. And I want to just clarify, I'm not saying that retirement savings isn't important. Of course it is, and we want to be prepared for retirement. I'm just saying we don't want to save for retirement so aggressively that we lose the ability to take care of an emergency today or to do some of the life stuff that we might want to do in between now and then. All right, 750, Lana, great job. That is, in fact, your credit score. This is the minimum credit score you ideally want to have. Anything above that is sort of overachieving. You don't have to have higher than a 750. If you do, great. But this is kind of where you want to be. This ensures that you're going to get the best rate if you have to borrow money, if you want to, get a mortgage, for example. This is ideal. Credit cards are really the best way to build up credit. So you could have a poor credit score because you haven't been responsible. You could also have a poor credit score because you don't have a credit history. So a lot of people are nervous about credit cards. I totally get that. You don't want to be irresponsible. You don't want to spend more than you have. However, we also want to make sure that you're building credit. So having those credit cards is your way of saying, look, this credit was extended to me, but I was responsible with it and I paid it back. A 50-point difference in your credit score, which seems minimal in the scheme of things, can actually save you thousands of dollars in terms of the interest rate you're going to get. And credit cards can also honestly be a tool for travel. So if that's something that you want to do more of, you can really spend some time hacking, getting into points, and using those points to offset the cost of travel. All right. Now, 35% is a number that we're going to see a couple of times in this presentation. It's a big one. It's an important one. But the first way we're going to talk about this 35% number is as your credit utilization, right? So the amount of available credit that you have versus what you're actually using or spending. So let's say, for example, you have a $1,000 credit card limit. You should have no more than $350 on that card at any given time. And that means that you're using 35% or less of your available credit. So I've had people reach out, say, oh, this is crazy. American Express offered me $25,000. It's so irresponsible. And I said, no. What would be irresponsible is if you use the $25,000. We don't want to do that. This is good because the less you spend on the card, the better your utilization looks. So it can actually have a positive effect on your credit score. I do want to note that this applies to the sum of all of your cards. So I'm using the limit on one card just for an example, but actually we're just talking about across all the cards. So you'll want to total up your credit limit on all your cards and then your total balances, and that will give you your utilization ratio. So for example, if there's one card that you really prefer, maybe it has a better point system, totally fine. It's not going to negatively impact you because you're only using one credit card. Okay, 35%, as I mentioned, this is a big number for us. This is also your debt to income ratio. So the total number of monthly debt payments you have as compared to your income. Those of you in real estate are probably very aware of this number. It's a number that not a lot of people know about or pay attention to. Whoops. But it is really important to mortgage lenders, for example. So you want to take your total monthly debt payments and compare that to your gross monthly income. So again, that's your pre-tax monthly income. So for example, take your annual salary and divide that by 12 versus just looking at your paychecks. Yes, Jennifer.
Hi, yeah, I have a question about this. So if you have, say, exceptional credit, let's say you're in the 800s, for lenders and things like that, does this rule still become as firm?
Yes, it is, because you could have great credit, but essentially this is a way of testing your ability to afford something, right? So if we're looking at like a mortgage, for example, and we're saying your debt to income ratio can't be over 43% to buy a home, essentially what they're looking at is how much is this mortgage adding to your total monthly debt payments, and are you going to be able to manage those? even if you've been responsible, there has to be a cap on how much debt you have as compared to the income coming in before you're basically a risk, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand.
That's a good question though, and we do get that a lot. I've also had people ask, sometimes you can get a certain kind of loan that doesn't require any sort of a down payment, for example, like if you get a VA loan or something like that. But you're not exempt from this rule just because you're getting a special type of loan. You can put less money down, but your mortgage payment's going to be that much higher, and we still need to know you can afford it. So essentially the way you would calculate this, like I said, is just take your total monthly debt payments, add those up. So for example, if you have a student loan, a credit card payment, and your minimum, let's say, and a mortgage payment, add those up. And if you make $50,000, the total of the three numbers we've used as an example here is going to put you at 46%. So you're on the higher end of your debt to income ratio. 35% is ideal, like I said. 43% is the cap at which you can purchase a home. All right. The number 2 is one of the other important digits, and this is the minimum number of investment accounts that we think you should have. Ideally, you want to have one of 2 different kinds. So first, what we would call a taxable account or a brokerage account. Sometimes it might be called a cash management account, or even a general investing account, right? So this is an account in which you can buy and sell stock or bonds and invest in the market. But you are not restricted in terms of when you can access that money, and you're also not receiving any kind of, preferred tax treatment the way you would with like a 401k, for example. So the other kind of investment account we want you to have is a retirement account or a non-taxable account. So 401k, Roth IRA, a SEP IRA if you're self-employed. There's a number of different types, and the one that's right for you really depends on your situation. But ideally, we want you to have one of each of these accounts. All right. So let's talk about the mindset shift. We talked about the 6 numbers that are really important. And it's good to have those metrics, but it can sometimes be hard to put new behaviors or habits into practice. So there's a couple of kind of dirty words, if you will, right? Things like budget, frugal, no, these aren't very sexy. We don't like them. But I want to get you to sort of think about these in a different way, right? All of those things actually equate to freedom. It can sometimes be really hard to get people to buy into building that emergency fund, like I said, right? It feels like, what am I putting this money away for? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a need for them right now. And the thing is that basically what you're buying, is your freedom. Freedom to take care of your family if something happens, to take care of your pets if something happens, to walk away from a job that doesn't serve you, to leave a relationship that's not healthy. There's a whole number of things that can happen in life, and having that money there is really a tool. Money is a tool. There's no point at which you won't have to think about it at all, but if you set yourself up the right way, you can start to feel a lot less stress and anxiety and fear about it, and really feel empowered and confident about what you're doing financially. Still getting some people coming in. Great. All right. To continue the discussion on the mindset shift, just real quick here, financial fitness ultimately requires action. So you have to actually do something about it. And little changes do lead to big results. So it's not like you have to do anything super life-changing. However, depending on your situation, if you sit down and you run the numbers and you realize that your expenses are way outweighing what your income looks like, then it might be time to do something bigger. We've all seen the articles about, giving up your Starbucks habit and skipping that latte. I saw a hilarious meme today. It said, I haven't bought my morning latte in 2 months. I thought I was supposed to be a billionaire by now. What happened? Those small changes matter, but sometimes they are just a drop in the bucket depending on what your finances look like. It might take something bigger. It might take looking for a new job. It might take a career change so you can get a higher income. It might take changing your living situation to keep those costs lower. Maybe it's reevaluating, what you really need to be happy. And I encourage you to go through the process of thinking about, more than anything, what you really value, right? Because saying no is not something that you have to do to be financially healthy, but the goal is to say yes to the things that really matter to you and say no to the other stuff that is taking up space financially that you're just not finding real value in. Like I said, auto drafting is great for goal achievement. So once you've figured out what you want to save for and how much you can put towards those goals, having that happen automatically without you having to go in and take any kind of action, just having an automatic transfer from your checking to your emergency savings or to a travel fund. And of course, accountability really helps. And that could be in the form of a friend who's also on a fitness journey. Maybe it's a group of women who are focused on health and wellness, or a group of friends. Maybe it's a financial trainer, but just finding someone that's there to help hold you accountable and remind you of your goals and keep you focused is really key.
Lindsay, quick question. And sorry for the person who asked this a few minutes ago, I missed it. She was asking, how would student loans be considered here? And Maya, if you want to get on and say what you were specifically referring to, but I don't know if that was about 5 minutes ago.
No worries. Yeah. And I think there's there might be a couple questions, and I apologize.
I'm watching the questions. No
Oh,
worries.
you are? Okay, thank you.
That was the latest.
We're at the questions section. So Maya, if you want to clarify, otherwise, if anybody else has anything they want to ask, you can go ahead and jump in.
Yes. Hi, this is Maya. Thank you so much. My question was mainly regarding the debt income ratio for the student loans.
Yeah, so we're just taking into account your monthly payment towards those student loans, right? So
not the actual total.
Correct.
Debt, just the payment.
We just want to know what you're paying to those monthly. What's your monthly obligation to that debt?
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. What else?
Hi, Lindsay. I have a question. My name's Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
I just would love to hear a little bit more about the brokerage account and why is that important? And why do you recommend having both that and, your retirement account?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, the brokerage account is basically like a general investment account. So you put your money in all the same things you would with a retirement account, right? Stocks, bonds. The reason it's important to do, or that we encourage people to do it, is that it's a more efficient way to build wealth, right? If you're saving cash, that's great. Ideally, if you're saving cash, you're doing it in a high yield savings account. And so I mentioned that's a savings account with at least at this point, like a 1.3% interest rate is pretty competitive right now.
Yeah, that seems high.
Well, it is high compared to what most traditional banks offer. So most traditional banks and credit unions, we're looking at maybe 0.25%.
Yeah.
Maybe less, maybe nothing. And so you really want to get your money in an account that's earning something at the very least, so that it's keeping up with inflation, but best case, so that your money is working for you. The best high yield savings accounts are online only. So we're thinking things like Capital One has a good one, American Express. There is also a company called Ally, A-L-L-Y, and Marcus is a good one as well, M-A-R-C-U-S, just like the name of the person. And that's great. But if you get your money into the stock market, we're talking about an average return of 7%. Now, that's average, right? In a given year, it could be 22%. It could be negative 5%.
Last 2 months. Yeah.
It really depends. But on average, that's going to be your rate of return. So when we're talking about long-term wealth building, we want to do that in an investment account. Now, why would we want that in addition to a retirement account? The reason is that the retirement account has restrictions as to when you can access those funds, right? So you have to be at least 59 and a half to tap into them. And so we want to make sure that you're building wealth and can do something with that wealth before retirement. And so that's the reason that we encourage you to have both types of accounts.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so welcome.
This is Rachel. I have a quick question as well, just piggybacking off of that is there any type of insight into kind of how much you should invest, or is there a percentage to start out with, anything like that?
Yeah, the answer honestly is it depends. What I would tell you is if you don't have your 6 months of expenses saved, start there. Then if you have any consumer debt, like credit card debt or personal loan debt, pay that off. And then it's really just a matter of what can you afford to do. So I've gotten a lot of questions lately about whether or not it's a good time to invest. And the answer is yes, but you have to have the available cash to put into the market, right? So it really depends on what you can afford. Nowadays, with the investment accounts, you really can generally start with as little as you want to, right? Like literally 20 bucks. There aren't the same kind of investment minimums that there used to be. There's so many providers. There's robo-advisors, which are basically just sites where your money is invested for you via an algorithm rather than like an advisor who's a person. So there's a lot of ways to get started, and you really don't have to have a lot of money to do it.
Got it. Thank you so much.
I have a question going off of that as well. There's a lot of information about that, and it's a little overwhelming. So I'm wondering if there's a way to sort of dive into getting started with a brokerage account in a way that's kind of digestible for somebody who's brand new. And then I also asked you in the chat, I asked you a private question. So if you could maybe touch on just the one I just asked.
I think we're doing a whole class on that. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Right? We're doing an
on investments. Yeah, I think there's a whole topic on investing 101. So they will go through it, but I'll just give you like a quick answer in case, I don't know, you don't get to join or something. Like my best advice for getting started, honestly, is to look at one of those robo-advisor options. Some examples are Betterment, Wealthfront, SoFi, Elvest. And I can actually type those in the chat if you guys want. Basically, the reason I suggest that is for you as a user or as an account holder, the experience is the same as saving money. You're just going to move money into the account, and it's going to be auto invested for you based on the goal that you set up. So it's a great way to get started, and to get started quickly without feeling like you have to do a bunch of research and figure out what investments to buy. You can then see all the details of what they've invested you in and take that and start to learn. So that's kind of a quick way to get your money in the market without feeling like, oh, I don't even know what to buy. Most of them exclusively use what are called ETFs or exchange traded funds. So these are funds where you have like a little piece of a lot of different investments. You're not buying like shares of Amazon or shares of Apple. You just kind of have an investment in something that tracks the overall stock market, for example. So this is positive because it means your portfolio is automatically diversified. I'm sure you've heard that term thrown around a bunch. And so that helps you sort of avoid all of the risk of just being invested in one specific company. So yeah, that's kind of my quick like elevator pitch on how to get started.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then, where did the comments go? Or here we go. Let me see. Oh yeah. Yeah, Jennifer, we can talk after.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question. My name is Katie. I've worked for startups, and I still work at a startup who's given shares instead of like bonuses and things. And so I was wondering, they haven't gone public yet, but they are going to go public, and I've had a lot of like brokerages and stuff come to me. But I was told that those shares would work in my favor if I was going to like get a mortgage or anything. It would work as, towards that debt to income ratio. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you could also sell those shares and potentially use them for the down payment. But yeah, essentially you could also set it up so that a certain amount sells each month and create like an income stream for yourself. Yeah, definitely those are useful, especially if the company is going public.
If it hasn't gone public yet, though, it's smarter to wait until it does, correct?
Yes. Yeah. You don't have a lot of options when the company is still private because there's not really anywhere for you to sell them. So they don't really have value just yet. I mean, they have kind of like intrinsic inherent value in that you're a part owner of this company that presumably is doing well. But they're not very liquid for you at the moment, but they become more liquid once the company goes public and you can trade.
And if they're not, and sorry to ask another, but if they're not public yet, does that help at all with a mortgage, or would it not do anything until they're public?
You know, I'd have to look into that more. I don't know exactly how they get calculated as part of, like, I would assume what they're doing is taking the shares you're receiving and calculating that as part of your income for the year, right? So in terms of the debt to income ratio, like, you're also receiving equity that is valued at X amount. And so if you're receiving them and they're giving you an estimated value, I think it would still count, but I honestly would have to double check.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Lindsay, this is Lana. I have a quick question for you.
Oh, Lana, I'm so sorry. I think I called you Lana a couple times.
Oh, it's okay. I answered to both. So thanks so much. This is really useful, but I have a quick question. So I did it sort of the reverse way. I've recently paid off all my consumer credit card debt and starting to save, not quite at 6 months, but getting there. So there's cards that I no longer need, and I've been advised and I've read that closing those out can hurt your credit. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't really feel the need to have so many cards any longer, and I don't think it's wise or makes me responsible, if you will. But I just wanted to hear your sort of take on that.
Yeah, so the open lines of credit are helping your credit score, and your credit score can be damaged by closing cards, especially if those cards have been in your name for a long time, because those cards are contributing to what's called your credit age, which is part of your credit history. So if you cancel all the cards that you've had for many, many years, now you only have a card, let's say, that you've had for 3 years, well, your credit age is 3, so you're not looking as responsible. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can deal with that. So, you know, first and foremost, you can have cards and not use them. You don't have to use them. Although if they do stay dormant for a really long time, sometimes the company will close them for you, because they'll just say, like, you're not using this line of credit. They might decrease the credit limit. They might close the card. What I usually suggest is take a small recurring monthly charge, right? Your Netflix subscription, your iCloud storage, your anything that's like a small monthly charge that's going to be the same. Put it, you know, take one and put it on each of those old cards and just set them up to auto pay, so that you have recurring transactions, but you know, you're not doing anything else with them. The other thing is, sometimes I get this question with cards that have an annual fee. So if you have an annual fee on a card that you don't like or use or want anymore, you can call the company and just say, you know, hey, I'm not using the benefits of this card. I don't want to close the line of credit, but can we downgrade it to something without an annual fee? And they'll just swap it out. It doesn't have any effect on your credit or your credit history, but now you've just got a different card and you're not going to be charged like $95 or more on an annual basis.
And Lindsay, we had a question that kind of went along with the credit cards. Can you, I'm repeating from the chat box, can you repeat what you just said about canceling your credit cards? What does that do to your credit report?
So canceling your credit cards can negatively affect your credit score. It can cause your credit score to decrease. And the reason for that is because, one, you now have less available credit. So whatever you're charging is now looking like a bigger percentage of what you have available, so that utilization increases. And two, credit cards, especially credit cards you've had for a long time, are contributing to your credit age or your credit history. So closing those out is decreasing that credit age, and therefore can decrease your overall credit score.
All right. And there was another question. How are shares incorporated in a debt to income ratio?
Yeah, I think I mentioned, basically they'll take those shares. Those are a type of income you're receiving, right? It's equity in the company. Those of you who've received it, you know that you pay income taxes when you receive equity, because it's treated as income. So there, I assume, would just calculate, you know, what you're receiving and have that be part of the income part of your debt to income ratio.
Right. And going back to the credit cards, what about new cards and closing them? Can you close a new card?
If you have a new card, you can close it if you really dislike it. It's still going to have an impact to your credit score. It'll be much more minimal than, you know, closing a card you've had for 10 years. What I encourage people to remember when it comes to your credit score is that nothing is permanent. If you do something that causes a ding, you can always work your way out of it. It's just a matter of timing. And you just want to make sure that when you're making those decisions, it's not like on the eve of applying for a new mortgage or getting a car or something where you're going to have a credit check. But yeah, if it's a newer card, it doesn't matter as much. You know, unfortunately with credit scores, it's not an exact science. So there's so many factors that go into it. If that's one of 2 cards, that could have a bigger impact than like if you have 6 and you close the one you've had for a year. That's not as big of a deal. You still have a lot of available credit. So there's not like a hard and fast rule. There are some places online. Credit Karma is one of them where you can actually use sort of a, not really a calculator, but it's like an estimator, and they let you put in like what you're planning to do, and they'll give you a guess on like how it'll affect your credit score so that you can see, you know, give or take what kind of damage it's going to do. We talked about wanting to have at least a 750. So if you have an 800 and you have a credit card you just really don't want anymore, maybe you don't want a relationship with that bank, maybe it's just like driving you insane, I don't know. You can close that. Even if it's going to drop you 30 points, you'll still have a 770, which is great. So yeah. Unfortunately, not like a black and white response, I know, but there's just a lot of moving parts when it comes to your credit score. Travel miles and using or paying off only one card. Yeah, so like I said, if you favor one credit card, that's totally fine. You definitely need to have more than one credit card to maintain good credit. You don't have to use more than one credit card, but it's definitely recommended that you have more than one. There's no magic number, so before you ask me how many you should have, there's not like a hard and fast rule, like everyone should have 3. In terms of ones I recommend, honestly, because their programs change all the time, I recommend looking at some newer reviews. Thepointsguy.com is a great resource, and I can actually put that in the chat so you guys can check that out. That's great for card reviews. The other thing I would tell you is that honestly the best card is really dependent on you, what you want to do with it, and what your travel, thank you, Emily, what your travel style looks like. So, you know, is getting a card for a specific airline a good idea? Not always, but sometimes. When I lived in New York, I never had an airline card because I just got on the flight that was cheapest, and that was always a different carrier. I live in Dallas, Texas now, and every flight I take is American because that's their hub. So now I have an American Airlines credit card. So it really just depends on what your habits are and what you're looking to do. There are credit cards that have great rewards that are cash back versus travel. So if travel is not your priority, you can look at those as well. But yeah, the Points Guy is a great resource.
Does it matter if it's your own card or if you're an authorized user on another card? How does that impact you?
So if you're an authorized user, the credit of the person who is the card owner can affect you. So if that person is irresponsible, that will negatively affect you. However, most of the time, the reason we get added as authorized users is to help us. So like I know a lot of people will put like their kids on their cards, for example, to help them build credit sooner and things like that. So that usually has a positive effect because it's establishing a longer credit history. And so that credit age is going to be that much higher. However, you are now tied to that person. So if they're not being responsible, that can have a negative effect on your score.
So if you have a higher credit score than the person who's adding you, it can bring you down.
Yes. Okay. At one point in your financial journey, should you get a financial advisor? There's not a hard and fast rule. I think it depends what you're looking to do. You know, I think you should have some kind of financial coach or advisor. A lot of the traditional advisors that exist are really just looking to help you build like a retirement account or investments. And so if you're not there, then it's not the right time because they're not going to work with you. But it would be good to have some kind of guidance and planning and accountability. In terms of the investment portion, it's a matter of when you're ready. So you know, if you're still kind of figuring out saving and paying down credit card debt, then it's probably too soon to look at working with a financial advisor in the traditional sense, because you're just not ready to be putting money into those investment accounts, whether it be general or for retirement. But it just kind of depends. On the other hand, if you're really into this kind of stuff and you do enough research and get support, like it's possible that you won't ever need an advisor and you can do a lot of this on your own. Are there exceptions to saving first, then debt payoff? Example, unplanned money like stimulus checks. So it really depends on how much you have saved. And actually in our current times, I'm encouraging people to hold on to cash more than ever. Normally I will encourage my clients to split windfalls, something like a bonus check or a tax return, 50-50 between savings and debt. So it's really equal in terms of how much they're saving and how much debt they're paying down. But in a situation like what we're going through currently, having cash is so important, and everything is so uncertain in terms of, you know, employment status and how long this will go on and what other effects we'll see to the economy, that holding on to cash is really key. So I would say if you don't have money saved and you did get a stimulus, like that should go into savings. And not that the debt's not important, but, you know, figuring that out. Opinion about the debt snowball strategy. Snowball versus avalanche, I'm assuming is what you're talking about. With the snowball strategy, we're looking at paying smaller debts off first. It feels really good because we can get things checked off and it's very motivating. With an avalanche, we're looking at higher interest rates first. So just for those of you who might not understand the two concepts, I really, obviously from a purely financial perspective, it makes more sense to pay off higher interest debt first. However, as I said, paying off smaller things first can sometimes be really motivating, and sometimes that's what people need. And sometimes it's nice to simplify your situation. So rather than working on 3 different bills at the same time, we know we can get one paid off this month, like let's just do it, even if it's not the highest interest rate, so that there's one thing off your plate. So like I said, from a purely financial perspective, we're looking at paying off higher interest debt first. But if it's more motivating to you to get some small things paid off, whether or not they're the highest, then by all means do it, because you're more likely to be successful and continue with your plan. Thoughts on investing in gold? I mean, gold is great. It can be a part of your investment portfolio. It should not by any means be all of your investments. There should never be more than 5% of your portfolio in one specific type of investment. And I just mean, like, obviously more than 5% can be in stocks, for example, but like more than 5% should never be in the stock of one specific company, in the same way that we don't want more than 5% to be in gold or in Bitcoin or in whatever other things you might be interested in investing in, because we need to maintain diversity to ensure that you're not at risk for losing all of your value. Do we advise guidelines for people at various ages? Yes, we work with people of all ages. My oldest client is 74. We are working to get her retired in the next year. We my youngest client is 17, so we work with everybody. There are different ways that we might approach those situations, and obviously those people have different priorities, but the reality is every client kind of has their own situation and their own priorities, and we really try to work with everybody one-on-one to make it really personal, based on your situation and your goals and your timeline for accomplishing those things. So, oops, keep doing that. My bad. All right. Any other questions?
Lindsay, I'd be interested. I mean, I know the difference because I have learned a lot about you all. But the difference between a standard financial advisor and how you guys operate, because I think that's what's really important and was really compelling to me as I learned more about you all.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really willing to work with anybody, like I said, no matter where your situation, no matter where you're starting. I used to work for Merrill Lynch, and I know that most traditional advisory firms have investment minimum requirements. So if you're in debt or if you're just looking to save, they're not going to work with you. They're hoping for you to have, at least at Merrill, it was at least $250,000 available to invest to get started. And part of why we were founded as a company is because we felt that was very inaccessible. And the reality is that everybody needs financial planning and everybody needs financial literacy. And so we want to be more accessible to everybody. And also because we believe that personal finance is really personal. So like I said, we really make plans customized to you and your specific goals. I've helped people plan to take a year off work and travel the world. I've helped people plan for career changes, going back to school, starting a business. I mean, really, there's anything and everything in between. And so we're really looking to customize what we're doing with you and help you succeed. So.
Hey, Lindsay, I know we only have like 5 minutes left. I just wanted to make sure we address some of the other comments that are coming up in the chat box. One of them, several of them actually have been about investments, specific investments. And I want to call out that we have one of the 4 workshops is investments. I think it's week 3, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, June 4th is Investing 101, and next week is Budgeting Bootcamp.
Awesome. So a lot of those questions, Amanda had a question about a budgeting tool. I'm sure that will be brought up, but if you have a quick recommendation, that would be great. Advice guidelines for people at various ages, investing in gold. And what was the final one? Oh, important. What is the cost involved upfront to work with a financial advisor, just to give people a range to see if it's something that they can afford?
Yeah. Are you asking about our fees specifically or in general?
That one is from Lana.
Yeah, Lana's nodding.
Yes, your fees.
Yes. So we, for an individual, and Emily, are we still running our oh, she's got it. She put it in the chat.
Hi, I'll just, you can take it, Lindsay, but yes, and Lana, I just put it in the chat box, but the average client at the gym is paying $85 a month. We're actually running, we're calling a recession special right now. So that would be $70 a month for an individual and $90 for a couple. And then if that is like, we have a level 2 and a level 3. So those are level 2 pricing. Level 3 might be like if you have, multiple homes in, in multiple states, or maybe you want to talk about your business finance and your personal finance. So that might go up a little from the 70 and the 90, but that's what the prices are right now. But before
the 20-minute phone call is sort of the free, like, kind of assess whether you want to work together kind of thing. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
To be clear, that's not with the trainer that you ultimately work with. We have a warm-up call team, and they just kind of help you understand the process, how it works. They'll help you get matched with a trainer that they think is a good fit for you. And I recommend, if this is something you're thinking about, we have bios online and videos where you can get to know us, so you can get a sense for everyone's background and personality. So definitely, if you think you're going to want to do it, take some time to do that so that you can have some input in who you work with. Okay. 529s. I can go over this real quick. So a 529 is a type of investment account specifically for education. Each state offers a certain tax benefit for contributing. So you might get, a certain tax break depending on your contribution. You have to look up the specifics for the state where you live, or actually each state has its own program and you don't have to contribute to the program in the state where you live. So if you started contributing to the Maryland 529 and now you looks like opposite. Started contributing to a 529 in California, now you live in Maryland, you can keep contributing to the same 529. You're going to get the tax break because of the state you live in. Check out. Oh wait, sorry, that was a response. What else? Yeah, I think the 529 is covered in the Investing 101 session, because there's a couple of other investment accounts. Actually, I don't think that they go into that, but there's a couple of different investment accounts for education. So they won't go over the specifics in the investing session, but maybe that's something we can add if that's something everyone's interested in.
Yeah, I can make a note of that and we can add that in the session if there's interest. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me see, anything else I missed? Oh, do I like the FIRE movement? So FIRE is an acronym. It stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. Yeah, we love the FIRE movement. For me personally, I think it's a bit intense, like some of the stories I've read, but it's people, I am working towards financial independence in my own way. Some people are very gung-ho to the point where they live in a camper and just save every penny that they have, and more power to them, and they'll be able to retire sooner. That's not my personal style, but we do encourage everyone to be aware of their financial independence number. And that's something that if you do work with us, your trainer will help you figure out, but essentially how much money you have to have put aside to no longer be dependent on any kind of employment income. And that's especially important if early retirement is interesting to you. All right. Someone said, how do you figure that out? Your financial independence number is your monthly expenses multiplied by 12. So to get your annual expense number multiplied by 25. And that is the amount of money you need to have put aside. All right. Thank you, Emily, for providing that email. Great. Sheena, Kristen, anything else?
I don't have anything. This was awesome. I think we learned a lot. I did record it, so we'll be sending that out within the next 24 hours. Thank you all so much for taking the time. Just real quick, could you remind us of what classes we have coming up?
Hi, sure. This is Emily again. Okay, so next week, same time, we have Budgeting Bootcamp. Then June 4th, we have Investing 101. And then June 11th, I want to say it was retirement planning. It's retirement planning.
Mm-hmm. And
I'll put that in the chat box too.
Thank you. And if anyone has any questions that they hope to get answered on those calls, just send to your particular real estate agent who posted about this, and so we can get that to them ahead of time. That's all I've got. Kristen, Melissa, Brittany.
Thanks again to all of our partners. Having like-minded people in this environment is really inspiring. And I, of course, am grateful to each one of you ladies that we've partnered with, including you ladies from the Financial Gym. We are obviously better together. And thanks again. It was just great.
Hey, so glad. This was lovely. Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.